Round two. Lou, and thank you for joining us this morning. I'll keep an eye on things and check that we are still live, because today's content, I think a lot of owner founders can relate to. I think last year during the pandemic, a lot of owner founders thought that they were coping just fine, and they put on a brave face, and they had to, because they had families, they had friends, they had colleagues, they had everyone looking up to them, and so it was their responsibility to put on a brave face. But you know what? Last year, some things there were times where even us owner founders didn't know what was going on, and we're a little bit scared too. And so that journey of kind of authenticity and vulnerability is so important, and many owners don't embrace it. There seems to be this real macho culture, particularly male owner founders, where they're meant to be this kind of Hercules style character that has all the answers and never gets sad or down or worried or stressed. And actually it's our job to break that myth, to say, you know what, it's okay to have a bit of a down day. It is okay to embrace those multiple versions of yourself. And those, sometimes when those behaviors manifest in different ways that you perhaps didn't expect, it's about learning to say, okay, well, this is this version of me. And that's part of the work that you and I went through last year, where we really uncovered the different versions of Nathan. And I was amazed at how many there were. But before we dive in, Lou, just a quick intro for the benefit of those tuning in. If you're tuning in live, then please do ask questions as we go. If you're watching this recorded, then please do reach out to Lou and I, and I'm sure we'll be able to help. But yeah, Lou, just for the benefit of today's audience, please just give us a 20-second synopsis of yourself and the stuff that you do.
Amazing. Thanks, Nathan. So I'm a culture and relationships coach, and it's not just about kind of romantic relationships. I'm really interested in how the people that we choose to interact with, or have to interact with in some cases, have the impact on our lives and how we manage through that. And so it's around how do we communicate and resolve conflict and go through all of those really complex, messy bits. And a big part of that is knowing that we are responsible for our own selves. And when we are complex and messy, that can be tricky. So I love having those conversations about multiple selves and how they show up in different ways.
Okay, so let's dive straight in, Lou, because I think inevitably sometimes we're going to go very personal here, and it's important that we draw that line, I guess, between showing everybody everything and also being as vulnerable as possible. And I've always been someone that tends to overshare, so I think that, yeah, this has always been a safe space. And I think for those that are listening, if you take anything from today, it's just to embrace the real you and not be ashamed or afraid of the real you, and realize that actually there will be good days and bad days. As an owner founder, or just as anyone, doesn't matter if you run a business, you work in a business, you want to work in a business, you can't find a business to work for just now, whatever that may be, there will be different days where different versions of yourself are present, and it's about learning to live with them. And so, Lou, just to start with, tell us a little bit more about the journey you went on when you discovered the different versions of Lou.
Oh, what a journey. They kind of came through at different points in my life. And so some of them might have been there longer, but I didn't recognize them. Very similar to your journey, Nathan. Like, once you identified them, you could see how long they've been with you. And so one of my favorites is Child Lou. And she was very much the curious, annoying type that was just like, I want to know how this works and tell me about this. And, being able to solve puzzles and make mess. But actually, as a young carer, and kind of actually when I got to university and encountered crowds of drunk people, Mama Lou came out a lot in that time. So make good choices, have some water, here, have some chips. So very much a feeder, and making sure everyone's okay. And I think they're the main ones that people can kind of relate to. But the other kind of favorite of I shouldn't have favorites really, but Super Lou is, she makes me feel invincible and can take on really big social issues, whilst still whipping up a 3-course dinner because it's Tuesday and that's what I fancy doing. So yeah, they show up in different ways, and I love each and every single one of them for it.
Is there a version of Lou that you're afraid of?
They used to be. So Warrior Lou with an O. So otherwise known as Anxious Lou. I've kind of learned to embrace the scaredy cat in me. So she came from a place of She came from a place of trauma, long-term trauma. And so for me, I was terrified of her because when she shows up, it means something might go wrong. And actually part of my own well-being journey was she's always thinks everything's going to go wrong because that's where she was born from, that's where she comes from. But actually being able to listen to her rather than kind of push her away and go, you're just making life really hard now, go away. It's kind of like a young puppy. Like the more you try and ignore them, the more they jump in your face. And so now making time for anxious Lou means that I don't have to be scared of her because I know she comes from a place of, I'm just trying to keep her safe. Like, yes, sure, we can run the world, but can we do it in a way that we're not going to burn out and, you know, cause this emotional chaos as we go? So,
I
yeah,
think, Lou,
she's necessary.
people listening, if they're just tuning in, will think we're batshit crazy talking about different versions of ourselves. But actually, for those that are listening, how do we go on that journey? And we'll do this as a live exercise with myself so everyone can see how it works. But how do we go on that journey of discovering the different versions of you?
So the first thing really is to pay attention, because it's not one of those things. It's one of, if you don't know what you don't know. But if now that you're on this journey of maybe I'll look, maybe I'll just pay attention and see who shows up. And our emotions are really good at doing it. The downside is that we're really good at ignoring our emotions, especially if we're trying to run a company, run our own business. We've got a whole load of stakeholders that are demanding time from us. Like emotions can be really unhelpful. And like you said, Nathan, that masculine culture of, you know, presenting a strong front, a strong presentation of self, that can, all of the emotion stuff then sounds like noise.
Yeah.
One of the things that we don't talk a lot about is how our body manifests our emotions. And so, you know, we talk about the butterflies in your stomach, but at the same time, that kind of like nervous, sicky feeling that we get. Our bodies are so limited in how, you know, we have limited way of presenting emotions in our body than, but we have more emotions. And so when we see somebody crying, our automatic response is they're sad, they're nervous, they're anxious. But actually, we also don't know how to express joy other than bawling our eyes out and smiling. And so being able to notice, so emotions is kind of like our, something's changed. And so being able to kind of go, okay, something has changed, what is it? And then kind of making a note. And for anybody who's kind of data geeks out there, things like a journal and some of the exercises that we'll do later, Nathan, that we've done before is kind of, okay, well, let's just think back to that last time I had a really big emotion or something felt different. And then we kind of explore that.
So, Lou, I guess enough of a preamble. It's time to dive in and start doing some of these things. Maybe a few of those butterflies being experienced right now. I think just for those that are listening, I just the whole aim of this series with Lou is to really show behind the mask. I think as an owner founder, you're often being looked to have all the answers or to save the day or whatever. And actually, the point of this is that no matter how lovely it might seem on the surface, there's often some little feet paddling, and actually it's about embracing that rather than kind of fighting that stigma of, oh, okay, we're all superhuman. Well, we're not. We have difficult days, we have good days, we have bad days, we have frustrating days, we have wonderful days. It's just about how we show those. And so today we're going to unpick how to identify the different versions of ourselves, and we'll go through some exercises with Lou, and hopefully you guys listening can watch and learn and hopefully start to develop these in yourself, because the sooner you can start to learn and live with these versions of yourself, it seems to be the happier you become, or at least the more satisfied you become. So Lou, let's get
one
go
more
on.
question before we jump in, Nathan, and I think it's really important. Since we've worked together, what has been the impact for your team?
I think I used to work at, well, I say I used to work at a million mile an hour. I still do, but at least I can recognize it now. I've developed this kind of emotional consciousness or awareness to at least say, okay, yeah, I'm being this version of me, and therefore I need to know that might be having an effect on us. And just this morning, before we jumped on, I'm trying to get something done before this morning's episode with ourselves, and I'm trying to do everything at a million mile an hour, and the person isn't necessarily understanding. And Whereas old me may have just gone, yeah, you know what, I'll just do it, or just send like a short message. I just thought, you know what, let's pick this up later and we can discuss it. It's no stress. And so yeah, really understanding myself and the limitations of each character as well, because that's the big thing is when you're in this character mode, if you like, if you I'm now playing as this player, suddenly your strengths and weaknesses are totally different to the strengths and weaknesses you had over breakfast or the strengths and weaknesses you had when you're driving into work. So it's just about recognizing it and going, okay, well, I can't do that because that isn't the version of me I am right now. I need to do something slightly differently. And that's a really a weird state to be in, but quite a fulfilling and rewarding state to be in when you know, okay, yeah, I've got you. I know what you're doing to me. I know that I know I'm one step ahead. I know that this is that version of me. And so, yeah, I'd say that's been the biggest change. I mean, it'd be interesting to ask the team what changes they've seen over the last year. I think definitely there's been times of real vulnerability, and I think that's the lovely thing is as soon as we started talking, I realized that it was okay to be a bit more vulnerable and to be more open and to share more. And I've arguably gone too far the other way and share too much, but I have just adopted the approach that, you know what, a problem shared is a problem halved. And yeah, okay, everyone is in the same boat in that we're all uncertain with what's going on in the world. We're all uncertain about the relationships we're in. We're all uncertain about the business that we're in or the economic climate or whatever. And I don't mean uncertain as in it may end anytime soon. I mean uncertain as in who knows what tomorrow holds. It might be a really positive day. It might be a not so positive day. So I think just embracing that I guess I live a very rigid life with work, that everything is militant, everything is 100 mile an hour, and everything has to be done in a certain way, and every hour has to be filled. And so the journey I'm trying to go on at the moment is to say, okay, how can less be more? And so reading a book called Essentialism, recommended by Marcus from Fountain, and really enjoying that pursuit of happiness with less being more. However, I still slip into bad habits, and maybe militant Nathan comes out and just get it done, and we'll worry about it later.
Well, I think that's a great way of sliding into our kind of introducing, catching everyone else up with the kind of work that we've been doing.
Yeah.
So it's been a while since I've had a chat with the different Nathans, and you've mentioned militant Nathan.
Yeah, he's out in full force at the moment. I think when times are busy, there's sometimes I guess there's two different routes you could go about it. Sometimes, like I say, within whether you're fulfilling a departmental head role or as an owner founder or as a manager or whatever, there's danger of everyone just saying, okay, second's a problem, send it to you. And one thing I'm trying to do is learn how to help someone diagnose the problem rather than going into problem solving mode and here's the answer. And that's something I'm really keen to develop. But certainly militant Nathan, where everything is done to a schedule and to a time, is a Nathan that's very present right now as the agency is incredibly busy. And yeah, it seems to be a really good time for e-commerce businesses, which is great. And we're keen to put out loads of content and we're keen to help loads of people. Um, that version of Nathan is present more often than not. And I guess one of the big challenges for us is how do we turn that version off when we're at home or when we're in a different environment? That version is sometimes really effective at work, but sometimes it's not the best version. It's not the right version for the circumstance. And that's the big thing to try and embrace is how can we try and just recognize that that version's in play and say, okay, now I've got to pivot because for this situation, this Nathan isn't right. I need to substitute him and get a different one on the pitch.
It always reminds me of that early call that we had, Nathan. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Militant Nathan showed up to coaching. I was like, this is a very different Nathan from last week. What's going on?
I think that's always been the nice thing about the coaching as well, is that over the period of the session, the versions of you change as you become more comfortable and you recognize that you're in a safe space. I guess militant Nathan starts to retreat and other versions of Nathan start to come through. And that's recognizable by just the tone of voice or the speed at which we're talking or whatever, and the reflectiveness of it. Suddenly, yeah, a different Nathan comes to the forefront, and then we embrace that Nathan and hopefully is the right one for the situation.
And so, which Nathan feels like making an appearance now?
I think that the Nathan that is really wanting to show his head is probably that vulnerable Nathan that actually not many people get to meet. And the thing is that sometimes you force him upon people because you want people to realize that there is another side. but actually it never seems the right time or the right space. And doing on LinkedIn Live seems pretty weird, right, for people to meet the other person. I think there's a massive thing. I look at some amazing business owners at the moment. I always follow a lady called Carrie Rose very carefully, and she's done an amazing job with her company. And yeah, she's really vulnerable on LinkedIn. Look at Stephen Bartley; he's been incredibly vulnerable. Some of these owner founders are really leading the way for entrepreneurship in young adults. Um, the thing they all have is great vulnerability and great empathy, and they're prepared to lay it all on the line and share with you the good days and the bad days. And that's what I want to do, because people only see the social media side of Nathan, and they see the really good stuff. And I just want people to all be aware that it's not always good. And again, all these people that go, oh yeah, it's lovely, right? You go to these old school functions, or you go to weddings or whatever, and say, oh Nathan, how you doing? Oh, you guys are smashing it. It's amazing. And yeah, things are going well. We've been incredibly fortunate. We've worked very hard, but actually, it doesn't come without its trials and tribulations, and the grass isn't always greener. Those people are like, oh, I just wish I could just go and run a business. Well, you could go and run a business, but actually, there are plenty of pros to your 37.5 hour week and your comfort around employment and all that good stuff. Like, don't just think that this is the promised land. For sure, for the right person, it absolutely is. And I wouldn't change it for the world. But I also want people to be fully aware that it isn't all roses, and there is challenges, and there is frustrations, and there is, I mean, imagine living a life where almost constantly you can't think of anything else. And I'm not just saying that for effect. Like, imagine waking up in the morning and the first thing you do is go on your phone and you check the bank, and then you check email, and then you check WhatsApp, and you make sure you haven't missed anything. And that doesn't matter if you're on holiday or you're at home. Like, that's not a particularly nice thing. That's not something you like to do. And also the fact that you know you're doing it but can't seem to stop it, and that's really frustrating. And I think, again, when since we last spoke, there's been various changes in my life, and people have come into my life, and suddenly you start to reprioritize and realize what's important. But even then, despite those people being there, you still can't escape that, and so you're still obsessed with the phone, or relentless and going back to clients at 11:30 at night or whatever. And everyone's like, oh, you're going to burn out, you're going to burn out. That's fine saying it, but it's a very different thing being in that version and stopping it. Yeah, I can even see it myself, but can you stop it? I think I have got better in the last few months in terms of switching off at weekends. It's got a bit better and everything else, but still doesn't mean I don't think about it. Still doesn't mean every car journey I'm thinking about it, or thinking what can, every time I get in the shower, I'm thinking about it. Every time I brush my teeth, I'm thinking about it. Every time I'm eating breakfast, I'm thinking about it. All I think about is what, every time I play cricket on a Saturday, all I can think about is, okay, what's happening with this client? Have they been spoke to in the last few weeks? Is that project on track? Are there any projects on fire? What's happening here? How can we grow the business? What new opportunities can we find? That is sometimes a very powerful behavior, and one that's really important for business growth. Sometimes it is absolutely crippling. And there would be lovely where just for a day you didn't think about it. You didn't, as soon as you went home, you didn't think about it. You just were present in the moment, doing what you're doing, having dinner with the family, or playing sports with the family, or just on the sports pitch with your friends, or whatever. That would be really nice if you could just switch off.
Yeah.
There we are, Lou. I said it get deep, I promised.
Oh, you know I love it. You know I love it.
Yeah, and
Why
I hope people can relate to it as well, right? And essentially, it's funny when you're talking, you kind of forget. I just feel like we're on Zoom, and I'm like, oh, we are actually live, and it's important that, yeah, I'm sure people can relate to that as well. That, yeah, sometimes it's all well and good saying, oh, yeah, we just switch off because it's a Friday, but as an end you don't switch off. It just becomes a way of life, and if you can switch off, then please whack your thoughts in the comments, because I would love to hear how you do it, because I'm yet to find it.
And it's one of those, I'm having one of those moments where like the different me's are in conflict whilst I'm listening to you, because I've got Super Lou, who's just like, yeah, that's us. Like we don't stop when we go. Like the shower is where we think, and the car journeys is where we finally listen to these podcasts that we're supposed to be listening to. And then there's this Lou that is like, we're in a coaching session, and so it's like, okay, what questions are we asking for? And just so much going on. But yeah, as as a business owner completely resonates. But I love that. But now I'm going to bring it back to an observation that I've
Yeah,
made,
sure.
that I've noticed. Vulnerable Nathan, as he showed up in that space, lots of conflict, because that was very much militant Nathan, I'm calling you out. That's what it felt like to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's huge conflict between the different versions of Nathan because sometimes quick isn't always the best, and okay, yeah, you might get there first, but you might have missed everything en route, and I think that's a real frustration. Is take yesterday, classic example, and it's going to seem really petty, but I promise you, it was both Nathans in play. We're in Tesco, we're getting some shopping, we're checking out. Before Nikki's had a chance to go to her purse, I've pulled my card out, I've zapped it on contactless, I'm ready to go. So Militant Nathan is here and in full play. We haven't used our club card. We haven't taken 20 odd quid off the shopping. We haven't done it like actually just if I just thought about it and just taken some time, okay, I could have saved 20 quid off the shopping. It would have taken like 30 seconds extra. And as a result, just like, no, let's get it done right. Let's get out the store quick, on to the next thing. Let's get in the car. Let's get home. Let's get to the next activity that we're doing. And actually just sometimes and the thing is afterwards I get massively frustrated with this militant Nathan. I'm like, for God's sake, why didn't you just think before you did something, or why didn't you just take 2 minutes just to think? But instead it's just like, no, right, done, next. And so that's something I'm really trying to battle at the moment, is how I can just slow things down. And it's difficult with the diary as it is. I'm doing some work with Phil Barder, you guys have seen on other coaching sessions, around default diaries and structure. And actually, the biggest thing I'm trying to structure is just space and time, because again, as soon as I look at the diary, and today it's back to back every 30 minutes, and it's I don't mind working like that when the right version is here, but sometimes it's I just can't. I need to take some time out. I see Tracy just put a comment in saying she walks a lot because she thinks a lot, although wine does help sometimes. And you're right. Actually, sometimes our best thoughts happen at the weirdest times of day. For me, it is often in the shower or in the car, or just when I'm in between tasks, I guess. And that's the thing, Lou, I'd like to work on with yourself over the coming weeks, is how do we not see everything as a task? Like I actually have going to bed in my diary, like brushing my teeth, all these things are tasks. So, okay, yeah, well, I must go to bed, and I've almost become obsessed with this high performance life. And I've been massive shout out to Jake Humphrey and who's the other chap? Really good guy in the high performance podcast. I forgot his name just now, but I've really enjoyed listening to their podcast, all about high performance. But the trouble is, these are Olympic athletes, right? Or kind of SAS soldiers or Premier League footballers. And yeah, I'm trying to emulate their relentless pursuit for success. And it's like, actually, sometimes there can be just a little bit of grace given to little old Nathan that's just working his way up, and not everything has to be achieved yesterday. And I think that's another version of Nathan that's come out a lot recently, is competitive Nathan, hugely competitive. And I get that fix through football. On a
Yeah.
Monday night, I play my football and I absolutely love it. But I just, if we lose, that is me done. I watch a lot of football, and again, I'm a massive Norwich fan, and I also follow Man United. And if either of those teams don't win, there is also not a particularly happy Nathan. And I play cricket on Saturdays, and I can be just as calm as you like before the game, but the second you cross that white line, I'm there to win and nothing else. And that's okay, but it also manifests itself at home. If myself, Nikki, and the kids were playing pool or something, I just want to win. I just always want to win at all costs. I wouldn't quite cheat like a game, but at the same time, card game or whatever, I'm genuinely cross if I don't win. And that's a version of Nathan that has come out more and more, is that constant need to win at everything. And actually, sometimes it's good to lose. And when you do lose, it hurts even more, because you're like, okay, I'm so used to winning, or so um, desperate to win. I guess I've been fortunate in life that I've won a lot of times. I've always played in good sports teams, but sports teams that have always been in good leagues or a good standard, or won games. And so when you do lose, it hits you hard. And that's one thing I'd love to be, is a better loser.
That is definitely something we can work on.
Good.
Okay. Take a breath for me, Nathan. Shrug their shoulders. I know you hate doing this online,
Yeah.
but you know why it's important. We're making space for a new Nathan to come up. So my kind of goal for our session today is just to introduce people to the different Nathans before we start working on them.
Sure.
So one more breath and then see who shows up.
There's a Nathan that seeks recognition, and I didn't know if I was going to talk about that Nathan today, but I am. There's a Nathan that is proud of what he's achieved with his business partners and colleagues and everything else. But there's a Nathan that seeks recognition, and I think that's come from um, several episodes in early stage life where perhaps things had the opportunity to not go as I'd hoped, and as a result, my grandparents stepped in and supported me through my education and everything else, and my parents were always incredibly supportive. But ever since that episode where things weren't working out at home and my parents' business failed and life became particularly challenging, I've ever since that point when people showed faith in me and allowed me to keep doing what I was doing, I think I then became like almost obsessed with yes, proving to people that they made the right decision and that I was, and then I guess having gone through the school and having been given the opportunity to go to such a school, to then to not go to university and to again choose a different route. I guess there was a lot of people that thought, okay, has that education been wasted, or has that time and money been wasted? And so I'm constantly on this challenge of proving people that it wasn't wasted, and that I. And so when we win these awards and everything, it fills me with immense sense of gratification. Just like, yes, great, I've shown people that I did make the right choice not to go to university. Or I did make the right choice to stay at that school, or my grandparents made the right choice to keep supporting me, or my parents made the right choice to move out of their house and move into some temporary accommodation so that my sister and I could have everything. And I think that is something that um, I'm often keen to. I want to talk about because I want people to be able to resonate and be other people in that situation to realize that it's okay. But I also don't want to talk about because I guess it's tough, it's upsetting. Um, yeah, it was a big part of my life, but that kind of um, maybe is it attention seeking Nathan? Is it like recognition seeking Nathan? Whatever it is, just that maybe it's a child Nathan. Maybe that's still there's just I guess I missed a lot of that childhood through not going to university and through I've always surrounded myself with older people, and particularly when I left school and suddenly you're your own boss at 18, and suddenly you're having these meetings with people that are in their 40s and 50s and 60s, and you're trying to convince them to make decisions, and you're building relationships with those people. Actually, what about the conversations with your friends that are 18, 19, 20? What about all the parties that you're missing? What about the nights out in London where, again, a lot of my friends moved down to London and kind of set up base down there, and I got to see them not half as much as I'd like, but I feel like I missed that part of my life. And sometimes that child Nathan just wants to have 5 minutes back when he was being the the clown and just yeah, really letting his hair down and doing what he wanted to do. And actually I've had to always be responsible and put on this show because I'm like, actually, well, people are looking at me as an owner founder of a business, and I represent the business as much as myself, and it's really important that I don't let the guard down. But actually sometimes I crave that. I really crave just going to a club and having a drink, or going out with friends, or being a little bit silly and not having to be so sensible all the time. And that's a version of Nathan that very rarely gets to show his head these days.
Yeah. Yeah. What I kind of observed was actually two Nathans came out in that space.
That's Logan and Lou.
They're in. I think they're interlinked, and so there is something that's really powerful that you've mentioned about recognition, and that you use the words "the right choice" a lot, making sure that people made the right choice around your behaviors and your and the options that you've chosen, the direction that you've taken. And for me, that sits very slightly differently from this child Nathan. And again, that conflict, because child Nathan gets to be silly. And I think we do see that. Those of us who know you, we see bits of silly Nathan come out in the kind of energy and the humor that you bring to places. But actually, it's not just about the behaviors, it's about the drive. And what I find really powerful about the story that you're generously sharing with everybody, not just me this time, is the weight of responsibility that you've been carrying. And so, yeah, I think there's something there that we can do to see how child Nathan and nurturing him might help with some of the others.
Yeah, I think that would be really nice. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. There is a great level of responsibility, or just kind of a yeah, this real nagging feeling that every time you make a decision, is it the right one? And actually, have you lost? Are you now off track? And I think as well as the business grew very quickly when we started, and it continues to grow very quickly, and now in this kind of position where you're like, shit, this is now a serious operation, and I've got to be there to I've got to be the best version of myself every single day. Every day I've got to turn up. Every day I've got to make the right decision. And sometimes you don't make the right decision, and it's living with that and understanding that it's okay to make mistakes, and often it's how you deal with them. And then when you start taking on people and you realize that you're then responsible for other people's mistakes as well, and sometimes you're not even involved in them. You're just there to pick up the pieces, and I mean that's immensely stressful. And I don't think, again, not enough business owners embrace or talk about that. They just put on this front of, oh yeah, things are fine, and yeah, we're incredibly fortunate, things are very good at the moment. But it doesn't mean it comes without its challenges. It doesn't mean it comes without this huge weight of responsibility and ownership and worry and everything else.
Yeah. Here's a question for you. And we're not going to go into details because I'm very well aware of those boundaries of us being online as opposed to just me and you. But have a think back for me. And so I'm going to ask you about a memory, but I don't want you to talk about the memory. I want you to talk about the emotions that came around for you.
Okay.
Outside of a work context, when was the last time you made a mistake?
Yesterday.
Okay. And how did that feel for you?
Embarrassing.
Okay. Which Nathan do you think was leading that feeling?
Well, vulnerable Nathan was the one feeling the embarrassment, but militant Nathan was possibly the cause.
Okay. And of the different Nathans that we've talked about, who would have helped most to manage those feelings of embarrassment?
I'm not so sure. I guess the reason I did what I did was to try and satisfy recognition, Nathan.
Mm-hmm.
But the way it turned out was that actually it satisfied nobody, right? It just was, okay, you try and do something because you think that's right at the time, but you do it so quickly you don't execute it perhaps as you'd hoped. And then actually, yeah, militant Nathan's cheesed off because now he's got to do something else. Recognition Nathan's cheesed off because people aren't giving him recognition for what he's just done, and vulnerable Nathan's cheesed off because he looks stupid. And I mean, and that was just that example. I don't even mind sharing it. Was the Tesco example, but there's countless episodes of that all the time, and that's another thing as well. Is I'm incredibly hard on myself, I guess, as you strive for this perfect life, this Instagram life. I guess you kind of become harder and harder on yourself, and so even the littlest mistakes seem massive. And so this morning I was angry at myself that I didn't get petrol before I set off, because then I was going to be late. So now I've got 5 miles in the tank in the car park, and it's all through poor planning. And once upon a time I probably would have laughed at it and thought, oh, okay, it's all right. But now I guess there's a version of Nathan that's pretty annoyed with himself, because he's like, actually, now there's an opportunity cost that for me to go and get that petrol later in the day is time that I can't be doing something else. And yeah, all of a sudden you're beating yourself up over something so tiny that realistically you can just go and top up the fuel, and 10 minutes later you're done. But actually, yeah, it seems like a massive episode where it doesn't need to be.
Yeah. I can imagine, because from the different Nathans that you've talked about, a lot of them were cheesed off.
Yeah, it was a pretty cheesed off situation. Yeah, all for something so little. But I don't know. I think there's a Nathan that really wants to come out, which is proud of all he's achieved and proud that those around him and proud at where he's got to in life and where he looks like he's going to and that's all really exciting. But he always seems to be trampled down by those self doubts, I guess, or those around him that are like, okay, yeah, yeah, great, well done, you got to here, but back you down because actually this is happening tomorrow, or yeah, you did all right here, but you did terribly here, and I think that's something I'd really like to fight is never giving airtime to the Nathan that just wants to recognise how far he's come or recognise how far Quickfire's come as a business or as kind of how great certain things are, relationships at home or anything like that. I never take time to appreciate that because I'm so busy thinking, yeah, but yeah, your relationship might be good, but you just did this, or yeah, work may be good, but you haven't won that £200,000 contract, or yeah, you might have played all right at football, but you still let in 3 goals, even though you won 10-3. And that, I guess, is massively frustrating. And there's definitely a frustrated tone to a lot of this, where you're just constantly in this pursuit of more. And I don't know if that's a greedy Nathan, possibly, or maybe we're just creating multiple versions of Nathan that don't exist. But there's definitely everything in my life is to excess. And so suddenly, okay, if I get asked to go and do the shopping and it says 1 milk on the thing, I'll bring back 2 milks because why wouldn't you want 2 milks? And okay, if we're going to get a takeaway, we won't just have one starter, we'll have every starter. And if, like, honestly, everything I do is always to excess. And yeah, okay, at the time we laugh about it and that's fine, but that's also massively frustrating. I don't do that to show off or to do anything like that. I do that because I just want everyone to really enjoy the moment. And so if you're buying a round of drinks, or buying a drink, you'll buy a round of drinks and that's fine. But sometimes it's, yeah, I guess sometimes it's difficult because you think, okay, well, it's always you at the bar. It's always you putting your hand in your pocket first. It's always you offering to treat people to dinner or whatever. Like, when do other people step up? When do other people? I by no means made it. I haven't got all the money in the world. Like, I can't just always be that generous person. I love being generous. I love having the ability to be generous, but I also sometimes can be too generous. And that's both with my time, which then impacts me massively because I can't do the other things that I wanted to do or needed to do because I'm too busy serving others. But also financially, the amount of times I'm lending people things or yeah, saying, oh, don't worry, let me get that, or I'll tell you what, I'll do this, or oh, okay, you put the petrol in and I'll go and pay for it. Okay, we're on a 5 minute journey and I've put in 30 quid in the tank. Well, why? Just because I like to be nice. I like, I guess, to be recognised. Um, but yeah, that's a fine line to tread, and something I'd like to stamp out is sometimes you can be too generous, and people, I guess, give them an inch, they run a mile.
As always, Nathan, I love that you do all of this work as we're talking, and these observations just come flying out of you, which I think is incredible. And I always learn from these conversations. And now you, again, that generosity of sharing this incredibly precious space that the two of us shared, and being able to give that to lots of other people. So I'm just mindful of the time.
Sure.
You can tell I've gone into coach mode now. Doesn't matter that there's people watching now and in the future, but also just, again, boundary setting for the work that we're doing together. And I just wanted to point to Hayden's comment: perfection is a distraction, another shiny object, taking your attention away from real priorities. Like, that definitely resonates. So thank you for sharing that. Nathan, is there any other Nathans that you might want some space before we talk about Proud Nathan and what we might do in the future?
No, I don't think so. I think they're the Nathans that I feel and see on the most regular basis. Occasionally, I guess, in different situations, other Nathans may appear and manifest. But right now, I think they're the core Nathans that are on show almost every day. And the big one is this, um, yeah, crippling, nothing ever been good enough Nathan, which is, yeah, it can be. I don't know. I was watching a podcast with Ant Middleton, or listening to a podcast with Ant Middleton at the weekend, and he was talking about there's like 15 or 20% of him that not even his wife knows about. And I found that a really difficult concept to understand. I think everybody should know about everybody, because then you can understand and relate and be able to empathize and understand. And I just think, yeah, I hate the thought of people not knowing certain things or having certain context. I guess there's a real afraid Nathan, and that's maybe the last one we'll cover today, is just as you grow a business, or as you grow as this kind of personal brand, or whatever you want to call it. I guess the higher you go, the bigger there is to fall, and the more steps up the ladder you take, the more painful the fall would be. And I guess as someone that's always feared failure, I think it's hard, because I sometimes think, shit, okay, well now we're getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and this is bigger and bigger and bigger, and everything you do has more opportunity to be scrutinized. Even today's session this morning, I'm thinking, okay, I've got this session with Lou. This is the first one. I hope people can take great comfort from it and understand that this militant Nathan isn't the Nathan that everyone knows and sees. But actually, yeah, you're always just worried. Everything you do now is tinged with worry that, okay, what about if this happens? What about if that happens? What about if you're um, yeah, if this decision leads to that decision, and suddenly you're creating this negative space around you, that one wrong decision could ruin your life, and that's quite a difficult way to live. Um, yeah, I think, I don't know. I thought the other day, I think I was coming home, and perhaps I was going a little bit too fast, and I quickly slowed down, and I thought to myself, you know what, if I was to hit someone now, or just bump into, like, anything, then my whole life could change in just an instant, and I could ruin somebody else's life just like that. And I'm sure most people, most normal people, don't think like that. But I just suddenly just started really worrying about, almost as if I'd done it. I was like, well, okay, if I did that, then this would happen, then this would happen, then oh, and this and this and this, and suddenly I created this really horrible place. And I was like, no, you know what? I guess, yeah, that fear of failure is sometimes what drives me on, but sometimes it can just be crippling, and you're just like, oh, sometimes it'd be nice not to think about that, and just to think, you know what, life's pretty good.
Yeah. So let's talk about when life is good. The image that I had when you talked about proud Nathan was me being that bit older than you, Nathan. How much of the Pokemon trend did you catch?
Yeah, a little bit. I collected
A
the
little
cards.
bit.
I played the games. Yeah,
Proud Nathan to me feels like Mewtwo.
yeah.
Super rare. You barely see it, but when you do, like
Get
it's
the
something
master ball
incredibly
out and you catch
special.
it. Yeah, yeah.
No, you see, that was militant Nathan out. Like
Ah,
something rare. Let's get it. Next step. That's the action. Calling you out right there. So, knowing that proud Nathan is the Mewtwo in your life of the many yous, when was the last time that he took the lead?
I think a few weeks ago, Nemo, as many of you will know, was recognised for an award that she had earned, and that was a really nice moment, because it just showed that actually the help that you're giving someone, or the um, those around you, were being recognised for the hard work they put in. That was really nice. I think I was proud for about 2 minutes, and then I started thinking about, okay, well, how do I get the next person an award, or how do I elevate the rest of the organisation while not neglecting myself? Again, I seek recognition myself, right? So it's all well and good supporting everyone else, and everyone says, "Oh, that's great," but you've got to, yeah, you've got to get all the team doing the public speaking and everything else. But I get a huge buzz out of that as well, so I don't want to lose that entirely. I think Friday night, it felt quite good. Or just Nikki and I, we went for dinner. We had a few glasses of wine. We really relaxed, and that felt great. But did I feel proud? No, I don't think so. When did I last feel proud? I think it was probably just when we came back out of lockdown. I came back in the office for the first time. No one was in. I looked around the desks. I saw all these desks, albeit empty at the time, but then the place started to fill up, and I just thought, yeah, we've created this. Fred, Martin, myself. This is our hard work, and I come into the office and I love it. I love seeing everyone in here. I love seeing what we've all created. But that's a big but. I constantly, from seconds after thinking it's amazing what we've created, I'm thinking, and just like that, it could be gone in an instant. And I guess that's through various episodes in childhood and having seen my parents go through a similar thing where one moment you had the cars, the holidays, the house, the this, the that, to have no car, they're taken away, the holidays taken away, the almost the schooling to be taken away, your friends taken away. Like, I guess you're so conscious that it can change in a heartbeat, and I just am so afraid of it changing, especially right now when it's good. I just don't want to lose it. But as a result, sometimes I just overanalyze everything and over worry about everything, as opposed to just yeah. And I guess sometimes that's when militant Nathan comes in, because if you do things quick enough, then you're hoping that it okay, I'll just get it sorted, and then you're not going to lose it. So I'll just quickly, yeah, just quickly fix that, or do that, or do that, or do that. And so you can't enjoy the process of doing anything because you're constantly trying to do the next thing to make sure that you don't lose what you've got.
So we're at your favourite point of our sessions, which is your homework.
Oh, I thought I got to shut my eyes and think.
I know
Time.
you love that bit too.
I love that bit.
I know, and we'll absolutely do that.
Okay.
But how do you feel about so from now until next month, when we do our next session with everybody? Yeah. And I know you hate written homework, so it's not going to be written homework. Don't worry.
Deal.
For those, for each time that Proud Nathan shows up, what is it that you could do to just extend that time a little bit more?
I'm just going to take some notes here. So, Journal Proud Nathan. What can I do each time to extend him? Okay.
So, what are your initial thoughts on that?
First, I thought, is that it?
That is it.
I can do that. I think I automatically thought to football this evening, and yeah, hopefully I play all right. And yeah, I think it's interesting actually, because with the football analogy, even in like five-a-side where it doesn't even really matter on a Monday night with your mates, I still have this horrible anxiety of conceding a goal and letting people down. And I think that's a big thing that many people will face, is that fear of letting others down around you. And maybe that links quite a lot of the attitudes or behaviors we've talked about today, is yeah, that fear of letting people down. But yeah, I'll certainly next time I feel proud, I will not only document it, but think how we can hold on to that feeling for longer.
Yeah, great. And that is it.
Easy as that.
Easy as that. Just recognizing and just, yeah, you don't even have to write notes. Just, I'm in this moment. What can I do to extend that, even if it's just for a couple more seconds to start with?
Okay. So I know, Lou, we've got another session next month. So snapping out of listening, Nate, into back to militant, Nate. We've got another session in a few weeks' time, and I encourage you all to tune in. I hope those that have been listening have enjoyed today's session and have got something out of it. It's really important that you're able to go on this journey of humility and vulnerability and discover the different yous that make you the person you are and the person you want to be. I do encourage you all, if you're ever challenging or worried about the different versions of you, to have a chat with someone like Lou, who's been absolutely instrumental in helping us to deal with them. And as you've heard from today, there's still work to be done on versions of myself that are not perhaps proud of or don't like to see, or that take too much of the stage. But these things only get better if you work on them and if you embrace them, and then set about trying to change them. So Lou, a massive thank you for joining us today. It's always lovely to catch up. I just wish these sessions were like for 5 hours.
I know.
But I sadly do have to get back and do some work, as I know you do too. But thank you for those that have participated too. I hope you've all enjoyed it. We'll make sure this is available as a recording. So if you weren't able to watch it live, no stress. Tune in your own time. Listen to it online, perhaps when you're driving or got some time to switch out, and see if you can relate to any of these behaviours. And if you can, then see what you can do about journaling them and starting to make some practical changes. But join us again in a few weeks' time. Until then, Lou, it's been a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.
I always love it. Thank you, Nathan.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.